In the beginning, before even the faintest whisper of wind or spark of light, there was silence. A silence so vast and endless that it pressed against the edges of what could someday be known as existence. I remember that stillness, not as something to be feared, but as something sacred. There was no time, no space, no distance, no direction. There was only the quiet hum of possibility, waiting. And then, as if the universe took a slow and gentle breath, the first heartbeat echoed across the nothingness. That was the moment when Arceus awoke. From that single pulse came light. It spread not outward, because there was no out yet, but inward through the fabric of the void itself. That light was thought, it was intent, it was will. Arceus, the original one, dreamed, and the dream became real. In that dream, the seeds of order and chaos intertwined, spinning soft threads that shimmered with potential. I watched as those threads twined into two delicate strands, one that shimmered like a river of silver, and another that glowed like the pink hue of dawn. They were the first concepts of what would someday be called time and space. The river of silver began to flow, though there was nowhere for it to go. It was motion before the meaning of motion existed. It was change before anything could change. From that river's endless current, a figure began to form. It was vast yet graceful, with a body like polished steel and eyes that glowed with wisdom. When he exhaled, the breath carried the first seconds, then minutes, then eons. This was Dialga, the keeper of the river of time, the one who gave birth to the heartbeat of the universe. As time began to move, a rhythm took hold. The silence rippled. From those ripples emerged boundaries, faint at first, then stronger, as if invisible threads were stretching to form walls between moments. And within those walls, the second thread, the dawn-colored light, began to twist and stretch. It expanded, curving, folding, bending, until it surrounded everything that time had begun to touch. From this vast network of folds emerged another being, radiant and majestic, her wings rippling like reflections in water. Palkia, the guardian of space, the one who gave shape to the river's flow. When Dialga opened his eyes, he saw only the endless current of his own making. He moved, and movement became history. He blinked, and blinking became memory. Palkia watched him and stretched her arms across the horizonless void, and her gesture became distance. Her wings brushed the edges of what could be, and that touch became the star's first canvas. Between them, the universe began to hum. But even in their majesty, the two were uncertain. They had purpose, yes, but no guidance. For a time, they moved in tandem, Dialga's river flowing forward, Palkia's folds expanding outward. Time filled the empty stretches of space, and space gave time something to move through. Together they wove the tapestry of reality, each thread intertwining with care and rhythm. I drifted among them, a quiet observer carried on the tides of their creation. At first, their harmony was perfect. Time ticked in gentle waves, and space spread like ripples in a pond. When Dialga slowed his rhythm, Palkia folded the fabric tighter, drawing the universe into a soft embrace. When Dialga's current quickened, she opened the folds wide again, letting stars scatter like glimmering seeds across a fertile sky. It was balance, delicate and divine. Yet all balance is fleeting, for just as light cannot exist without shadow, Even the god's harmony contained its discord. Dialga began to wonder, what if the river could flow faster? What if the stars could age and fade, only to rise anew? His curiosity became motion unbound, time spiraling beyond what space could hold. And Palkia, in her own vastness, began to stretch farther and farther, creating distance so immense that even time's current struggled to cross it. Their dance became a struggle. I saw galaxies collide as their rhythm faltered, stars burning too quickly or not at all. The universe trembled, as if unsure whether to grow or collapse. Arceus watched in silence. For even in its wisdom, the original one knew that learning must come from discord. And so, the two continued, unaware of how their striving shaped everything that would follow. From the heart of their conflict, energy spilled like rain. From that energy, the first matter formed. Small motes that clustered, cooling, burning, transforming. Dialga's flow aged them, while Palkia's embrace held them together. Out of this tension came worlds. Some were filled with gentle warmth, others cold and barren, but each one pulsed with the rhythm of their dance. On one such world, nestled in a swirl of distant light, I found myself drawn closer. I felt the first winds sweep across oceans that had never known a breeze. I heard the slow heartbeat of the planet echoing Dialga's rhythm, while its mountains stood tall within Palkia's structure. It was life, fragile yet enduring, and I knew then that time and space were not merely forces, they were caretakers. In those early eons, Dialga and Palkia learned patience. They began to understand that their roles were not to control, but to nurture. Dialga learned to let the river flow gently, not flood. Palkia learned to cradle creation instead of stretching it to breaking. In that newfound balance, the cosmos grew tranquil again. The stars breathed softly, the planets turned in steady rhythm, and even the void between them shimmered with peace. Yet peace too has its shadows. Somewhere deep within the spaces that Palkia stretched too far, and the moments that Dialga let slip too quickly, something stirred. It was not born of Arceus's will, but of imbalance, a reflection of what was lost between time and space. From this distortion came a new being, one with eyes like shattered glass, and wings that shimmered with inversion. Giratina. Neither wholly good nor evil, but a mirror of everything the twins feared to become. When Giratina looked upon the world, he did not see beauty. He saw the imperfections, the fleeting nature of time, the emptiness between stars. In his sorrow, he tried to reshape what Dialga and Palkia had made, to make it symmetrical, eternal. But in doing so, he disturbed the rhythm once more. Dialga's river shuddered, Palkia's folds trembled, the universe groaned. Arceus, in sorrow and love, reached out and cast Giratina into a realm of his own, the distortion world, a place where time twisted upon itself and space curved into impossible shapes. Yet even there, Giratina found purpose. He became the keeper of reflection, ensuring that what existed in one form would always find balance in another. His exile was not punishment, but protection. I visited that realm once, long after. It was neither dark nor light, neither silent nor loud. Every motion seemed to undo itself. Every echo folded back into stillness. It was peaceful in a way that defied understanding. Giratina drifted there, serene, watching the mirrored ripples of creation unfold beyond his reach. In his calm, I sensed acceptance. Even distortion, I realized, was part of harmony. Back in the living cosmos, Dialga and Palkia mourned, not for Giratina alone, but for what they had nearly lost, their unity. They sought one another across the endless expanse, finding solace not in perfection, but in balance. Dialga slowed his river, letting moments linger longer than before. Palkia softened her grip, allowing space to breathe. Together they mended what had been frayed. Ages passed. Civilizations rose and fell upon the worlds they had shaped. I watched creatures learn to count the rhythm of time, to measure distance, to dream of stars beyond their reach. They built temples in Dialga's name, carved shrines in Palkia's honor. In their prayers, I heard echoes of that first cosmic hum, the lullaby that had once woven creation itself. Sometimes, when the night grows still, I can still hear that song. It flows through every heartbeat, every breath, every moment that passes quietly beneath the stars. Dialga's river still moves, steady and calm, while Palkia's vast wings still stretch around all that is. The universe sleeps, yet never truly stops dreaming. And I, ever the observer, ever the dreamer, float between seconds, watching the endless dance. For in their embrace, all things find meaning. In their balance, all things find peace. And as I drift deeper into the rhythm of their song, I realize that I too am part of the flow, an echo carried forever on the tide of time and space. The stars had begun to hum softly now, a music woven from the threads of both time and space. It was not a sound one could hear with ears, but with being itself, a resonance that moved through all things, binding them in unseen rhythm. I drifted through it as one drifts through a dream, carried not by will, but by the universe's own breath. And within that breath, Dialga and Palkia continued their patient work. Time no longer ran wild, it flowed steady as a pulse. Dialga's blue steel armor shimmered faintly in the reflected starlight of worlds he had helped shape. Around him, every second formed a ring, each moment born, aging and dying, then folding into the next. He moved not through space, but through the current of what had been and what would come, his body gliding as if the concept of motion itself adored him. When he spoke, his voice was the sound of 1,000 clocks ticking in unison, soft, comforting, endless. Palkia's form shimmered beside him, graceful and serene, her wings stretched across vast distances, folding galaxies into tender shapes as though she was cradling every possible existence within her reach. When she moved, stars danced in her wake, space rippled, expanding like a sigh. There was beauty in her precision, for she did not simply create distance, she created belonging. Each world, each star, each atom had its rightful place because of her. For countless ages, they worked as one, two halves of the same heartbeat. I saw them weave constellations not for wonder, but for guidance. Each cluster of stars a signpost in the ocean of forever. Dialga's flow ensured that every spark was born in its destined moment. Palkia's form ensured that each one had a home to burn within. Together they made the cosmos something more than infinite. It became meaningful. Sometimes I wondered if they spoke in words, or if their communication was like wind and wave, patterns of rhythm and motion that only they could understand. When Palkia folded her wings close, Dialga's river slowed in response. And when he stretched the current faster, she widened her folds to contain it. They did not need language. Their understanding was older than speech. But even the most perfect dance feels tension when eternity stretches too long. I began to feel it first in the edges of the void, tiny distortions where time looped back on itself, where space folded too tightly. It was not malice that caused it, but the weight of their perfection. Time desired to move forward endlessly. Space longed to hold everything in stillness. The very nature of their being opposed itself. And so, ever gently, conflict began to stir once more. I watched as Dialga's eyes dimmed, heavy with purpose. He saw how worlds lived and died and wanted them to continue, to grow faster, to fill the stillness. Palkia, meanwhile, wanted to preserve the serenity of creation, to keep things as they were, a cradle that would never break. Their harmony began to unravel in whispers. Stars flickered, the river of time quickened, the folds of space tightened. The universe began to tremble again. Arceus, silent and distant, did not intervene. Perhaps it knew that even the gods must learn through their own imperfection. Perhaps it trusted that love, once found, could never truly be undone. One day, or perhaps one epoch, Dialga's current grew so strong that it tore through Palkia's folds. A tear appeared in the fabric of reality, a place where neither time nor space could properly exist. It shimmered like glass underwater, bending light and thought alike. I felt the ripples of it pass through me, and for a moment I was everywhere and nowhere at once. The air, if one could call it that, was heavy with distortion. Creation shivered. Palkia's cry echoed across the galaxies, a sound that shook the bones of stars. She spread her wings wide, trying to contain the wound, but the effort only made it larger. Dialga, stricken with sorrow, tried to slow the flow of time to heal it. But the universe does not easily forgive haste. For every second he slowed, another century aged elsewhere. Worlds flickered in and out of being. Oceans boiled, mountains reformed. Life danced briefly, beautifully, before being unmade. In that chaos, Giratina stirred once more. His eyes opened in the deep reflections of what had been and what might be. From the distortion world, he gazed upon the breaking balance with quiet understanding. Without words, he reached out, his claws shimmering with inverted light, and steadied the ripples that threatened to consume everything. His reflection passed through the tear, soothing its edges. Slowly, reality began to heal. Dialga and Palkia, both humbled, bowed their heads. They did not speak apologies, for none were needed. Instead, they shared a single gaze, an eternity of understanding passing between them. From that day forth, they moved not as separate wills, but as one. Time would flow, yes, but never without space to hold it. Space would stretch, yes, but never without the rhythm of moments to guide it. It was then that I began to hear something new, the faint whisper of life stirring again. The stars hummed once more, softer this time, gentler. Across the worlds, rivers began to flow, echoing Dialga's current. Mountains rose, mirroring Palkia's reach. The two forces were no longer masters. They had become caretakers once more. I watched as one world grew lush and green, its skies vast, its oceans deep. Pokémon of all kinds emerged, tiny, wondrous creatures full of curiosity. They moved, they rested, they dreamed, and in their dreams I could sense it. The lingering memory of time and space working in harmony. Even the simplest of lives carried the echo of their creator's rhythm. There were nights when Dialga would visit those worlds unseen, his reflection shimmering in the rivers. The creatures would look upon their waters and feel something stir, a sense of yesterday, of tomorrow, of eternity. They would not understand it, but they would feel it. And Palkia too would come, her presence a soft tremor in the stars. When she passed, oceans would calm, and the night sky would seem to expand in quiet wonder. I drifted through those moments like a gentle breeze through tall grass, my essence carried on the rhythm of their creation. Every heartbeat of the universe became my lullaby. There was no fear in the infinite, no loneliness in the vastness, only the endless comfort that all things were as they should be. As eons passed, civilizations began to rise. Intelligent beings, humans among them, looked to the heavens and asked the same questions that I once had. Who shaped the stars? Who marked the days? Who gave meaning to distance and time? And though no divine voice answered them directly, they felt the truth in their hearts. They began to name the gods they sensed in the world around them. Dialga, they called the keeper of time. Palkia, they named the guardian of space. And even Giratina, the shadowed one, they honored as the watcher beyond the veil. Their prayers rose like smoke, carried through the thin spaces between seconds. I saw Dialga pause in his current to listen. I saw Palkia lower her wings to shield the fragile worlds from harm. They were not distant gods. They were present, quietly loving, silently sustaining. The universe itself was their cathedral. There are moments still, even now, when the veil of creation grows thin and one might feel their presence. The tick of a clock, steady and eternal, the stretch of a horizon infinite and kind. These are their gifts, their reminders. And when the stars shimmer brighter than usual, I like to believe it is because Dialga and Palkia are dancing again, renewing the rhythm that keeps all existence alive. I find myself slowing as I tell this. Words become softer, breaths longer. The story fades into the same gentle hum that began it all. Time flows, space unfolds, and we drift as we were always meant to, safely, serenely, endlessly, in the embrace of the gods who shaped forever. The stars were ancient now, yet still they sang. The song had changed though, where once it had been wild and bright, now it was gentle, deep, resonant. Time had aged the melody, softened its edges, and space had given it room to breathe. I floated through it, half dreaming, half awake, feeling the pulse of existence move through me like a slow tide. Dialga and Palkia's rhythm continued, patient and eternal, a lullaby the cosmos would never forget. As the ages stretched on, time became a tapestry of memory, each moment layered upon the last, until the universe itself became a story told in endless verses. Dialga's rivers flowed through stars and planets alike, marking beginnings and endings with quiet certainty. And Palkia's vast wings continued to fold and unfold, ensuring that every moment had a place to belong. The two gods no longer needed to intervene directly. They had built a system so harmonious that creation could sustain itself. Yet I could feel their presence in every corner of existence. When the sun rose over a sleeping world, that was Dialga's gift. When light spread across a valley, revealing distances unseen, that was Palkia's touch. The two worked unseen, like the unseen roots of an ancient tree, holding everything together beneath the surface. But time is relentless, even to those who shape it, and as millennia turned into eternities, something new began to emerge within the folds of creation. Consciousness not bound by fear, but by curiosity. Life began to question its makers. I drifted among their thoughts, heard their wonderings, felt their awe. They built observatories to study the heavens, carved symbols into stone to honor the gods they could not see. Each civilization spoke a different name for the same truths, that time was sacred and space divine. I watched one world grow from stone to steel, its creatures reaching ever farther, yearning to touch the stars. They mapped the flow of time, built instruments to measure its rhythm, not knowing they were listening to Dialga's heartbeat. They charted the vastness between worlds, giving names to constellations that were born from Palkia's gentle curves. And though they did not realize it, every chart, every equation, every dream was a prayer. Sometimes Dialga would watch them quietly, his sapphire eyes soft with something like pride. He saw their growth not as defiance, but as reflection. They were learning the same lessons he and Palkia had once struggled through. And Palkia, ever the nurturer, would spread her wings wider still, making room for their ambition. Even as they sent their fragile crafts into the black, she steadied the fabric beneath them so that they might not be lost. One night, though in the void, nights and days have little meaning, I felt the universe slow. It was subtle at first, a faint easing of motion, like a held breath before dawn. I followed the stillness and found Dialga there, resting at the edge of his own river. His armor no longer gleamed as brightly as before, dulled not by decay, but by wisdom. His voice, when it came, was softer than ever. Even rivers must one day find the sea, he murmured. Palkia appeared beside him, her presence shimmering like the reflection of 1,000 dawns. And seas must flow back into the sky, she replied gently, so the cycle may never end. They looked at one another, not as gods bound by duty, but as companions bound by love. In that gaze lay every sunrise that had ever been, every distance ever crossed. They spoke then of balance, of how every life born within their creation carried a spark of their essence, how even the smallest creature lived and breathed by their rhythm. Dialga spoke of moments, those fleeting things that can never be recaptured, yet somehow lasted forever in memory. Palkia spoke of presence, that feeling of being part of something greater, of belonging to a space so vast it defied fear. Together they spoke of eternity, not as an endless span, but as a gentle loop, a heartbeat that never truly stops. And as they spoke, the universe listened. Stars pulsed brighter for a moment, then dimmed into peaceful slumber. Whole galaxies shifted slightly, aligning themselves with the soft tempo of their words. I could feel it. The cosmos was not expanding or contracting, it was breathing. I drifted closer to them, silent. The air, or whatever it was that surrounded us, tasted like memory. Dialga turned his gaze toward me, his eyes vast as eons. You have watched long enough, he said, not in reprimand, but with tenderness. Do you see now what time is? I wanted to answer, but my voice felt small in the immensity of that moment. Still, I tried. It is not movement, I whispered. It is meaning. A smile ghosted across Dialga's metallic face. Yes, every second is not a passing, but a keeping. What has been does not vanish. It rests within the flow, waiting to be remembered. Palkia tilted her head, her eyes soft as nebulae. "And do you see what space is?" she asked. I turned to her and felt the endlessness of her being stretch around me. "It is not emptiness," I said, my voice trembling. "It is the cradle, the place where everything finds its way home." She smiled, and the stars themselves seemed to sigh in contentment. "Then you understand," she said. "You too are part of this harmony. You always have been." Her words echoed through me, deeper than sound. In that moment, I realized that I had never been apart from them. I was not merely an observer. I was a fragment of their creation, a thought spun from Arceus' first dream, given awareness so that I might see and remember. I was time's witness and space's voice, carrying their story for all who would one day listen. The realization did not frighten me, it soothed me. To exist within their endless balance was to be at peace. I felt my form dissolve slightly, as if I were becoming part of the fabric itself, and as I faded, I understood that this was not an ending, but another rhythm, another turn in the infinite cycle. The stars dimmed further, settling into quiet rest. On the worlds below, creatures slept, their dreams weaving into the gentle hum of creation. The rivers of time flowed softly, the folds of space relaxed. Dialga and Palkia moved once more, side by side, their steps measured and calm. They were not creating now. They were tending, maintaining, loving. Sometimes, if you listen closely, you can still hear them. The soft ticking of a clock, the distant curve of the horizon, the silence between breaths. That is their gift to all things, the reminder that every moment belongs somewhere, and every place exists in its own perfect time. As for me, I remain adrift, not separate, but part of the current. I drift through the folds of dreams, through galaxies and centuries, whispering their story to any who will listen. I have no beginning now, no end. I am only the echo of their creation, the murmur between seconds. And as I tell you this, dear dreamer, I hope you feel it too. The pulse beneath the universe, the warmth that fills the endless dark. Dialga's time flows through you. Palkia's space surrounds you. You are safe in their rhythm. You always have been. So rest now. Let go of the clocks, the miles, the endless chasing of what comes next. There is nowhere to go but here. No time but now. Close your eyes, and the river will carry you. The stars will open their arms. Time will slow. Space will cradle you. And in their gentle harmony, you will sleep. You will dream. You will become part of the story that never ends. For in the beginning, there was silence, and in the end, there will be silence again. But between those silences, between them, there is music. The music of creation, the song of Dialga and Palkia, the eternal lullaby of time and space.